Okay, great. So we're recording and you should be able to see the slides on your screen. And I can see the chat, so feel free to ask questions as we go, although I can't, for some reason, my mouse cursor isn't showing up the way it normally does. So hopefully that is okay. All right, so my name is Roz. I've met many of you before teaching in other courses. Really excited to be teaching this class again. And our TA I already introduced as Jenna. That's a picture of me doing an experiment on this peacock, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of my research on peacock social behavior this morning. In my lab, we're interested in animal behavior. So some of the questions that we're interested in are how and why animals choose their partners. This image shows you a species of bird that Jenna actually studied for her honors thesis in my lab, studying how females respond to how friendly males are with each other. And in my lab, we're also interested in questions about flight and navigation and how some birds are able to have much better flight performance than others. Okay, so for today's class, I want to give you a little bit of an introduction to the topic of the course. And then I'm going to tell you a bit about some of my research in the past on peacocks and the evolution of beauty. And I think it nicely illustrates some of the themes of the course. And then I'll talk a bit about the course outline, which is available on Brightspace, and answer any questions that you have. So we probably won't use the full 80 minutes this morning. I'm guessing it'll be like an hour or so, but we'll see. Okay, so to start, what is social behavior? So social behavior just involves interactions among, oh, it's so annoying. I can't move the Zoom things around because I can't see my mouse. It's probably a Zoom setting or something that I need to change. Anyway, interactions among at least two individuals. So for it to be social, there has to be more than one individual. But there are many different contexts in which this occurs. Many of them are pro-social behaviors or friendly behaviors, but there's also aggression and conflict and fighting, and there's also mating and courtship. And so there's a whole spectrum of social behaviors that we see in animals and in other kinds of organisms too. And I love this course because social behavior is at the heart of so much that we see that is beautiful and awe-inspiring and terrible in our world. So I've got a few video examples, and I hope they come through nicely on your screen. And I think I added the links to them in case they don't. So each one of these is about a couple minutes long. So social evolution is responsible for beautiful and bizarre mating displays, like this one. Okay, so that is a marvelous spatule tail hummingbird, and they live in South America. And what you saw there was the male, that's the one perching now with those weird racket feathers, and then the female was observing that display. And if you notice, she didn't have the colors that he had, but she did have kind of a reduced version of his elaborate feathers. So how on earth do those weird feathers in the tail evolve? Okay, social evolution is also responsible for incredible animal societies that engineer their own environments and have been doing so for millions of years, for much longer than we humans have been building things. So this is an example that was discovered a couple of years ago. What you're seeing in the lower part of the screen is a photograph of these enormous termite mounds in Brazil that can be seen from space. It's a system of termite mounds that is the size of England, the country, and has existed, they've dated them, and they've existed for as long as the Great Pyramids of Egypt. So it's 4,000 years old. And it's all created by this species shown on the lower right. And these mounds are not actually their homes. They live underneath. The mounds are just the earth that they've removed to build up the network of chambers underground where they live. So they're capable of some incredible things, and it's all thanks to social evolution, because it takes millions of termites working together to do this. Oops, okay. Social evolution is also responsible for some of the most terrible and awful things in nature. And so this is an example of some killer whales hunting in Antarctica. So there's a seal there. Sorry, this video is so shaky, but it was the best one. It's one that I really like. And what you're seeing is waves that were produced by groups of these whales. So they're working together in this synchronized way to try to knock this seal off the ice, to kill it and eat it. This requires really sophisticated communication. And it's really incredible behavior. There's lots of other examples of things that they do online. But that's only thanks to social evolution. Okay, and then this last clip was one that I sent around in the announcements via a link. I think there's no sound. Also from Antarctica. I don't know what species of penguin this is. So it just makes me so happy that those other penguins are coming back to collect their friend there. So we often have strong reactions to these behaviors because we are, after all, social animals ourselves. Okay, and coronavirus and the events of the past couple of years have just emphasized how important social behaviors are for lots of biological processes. I've had a really unusual situation during the past 2 years. I have a small child. Right now she's home, can't be in kindergarten. Hopefully that changes pretty soon, but it creates a lot of challenges. And before the pandemic, I told the students in the course about this village of Eyam in England that had in the kind of Middle Ages a plague outbreak in 1665 that was quite devastating, and it killed like 3/4 of the people who lived there. And according to the legend, it's claimed that this village self-quarantined for an entire year. Now, at the time when I told the students about this 2 years ago, that was like, whoa, that's a long time. Well, now we've been doing this for almost 2 years, although we haven't been fully quarantined, of course. But this picture shows you what are known as boundary stones, and it's alleged that people in the village who were quarantining themselves would come and leave money there, and people from outside that weren't coming into the village would leave like supplies and things like that. Now, I've also read that the story of this self-quarantine is probably exaggerated, although it's not exaggerated that there were plague outbreaks that killed large numbers of people hundreds of years ago. Okay. Okay, so what does it mean for social behavior to evolve? We'll talk about this more in some of our next upcoming lectures. But just to introduce these ideas to you, evolution requires heritable variation, with some variants succeeding at surviving or reproducing better than others. So just as individual behaviors can evolve, the way that animals interact socially can also evolve. And social evolution is the subdiscipline of evolutionary biology that is concerned with social behaviors that have fitness consequences for one or more of the individuals. Oops, other than just the actor. And we'll get into that more next lecture. Okay, so just a quick example of some of the remarkable things that have evolved. Puppies, like this one, enticing you with its eyes. So dogs have been selected by humans from their ancestor wolves, and so they differ from wolves in a number of ways. For example, dogs can be fertile any time of year, whereas wolves have a breeding season. Wolves are aggressive, much more so than dogs. And there's a lot of morphological differences, as anyone who has pets knows. Even within dogs, we've selected all kinds of interesting phenotypes. But their social behaviors like aggression have also changed, and including behaviors that they use in communication, including communication with us. And so this particular study that this image up on top was from looked at the muscles involved in facial expressions in dogs and wolves. And what they found was, this figure on top, you can see the comparison. There's a couple of muscles on the dog on the left that control the raising of the eyebrows. And those muscles are so small as to be practically absent in wolves. And what they do is they make faces like this, faces that are particularly effective on humans. So inadvertently, we've selected all kinds of things intentionally in dogs, but we've also selected a lot of things inadvertently that work for dogs socially interacting with us. All right. So at this point, I want to tell you a little bit about some of my research that I did when I was a graduate student on peacocks and the evolution of beauty. And so again, feel free to drop any questions in the chat. I'm watching there too. But first, I want to do a couple of quick polls. So Jenna, let's see if you can do this. What I want to poll you about first is whether you, what other courses in animal behavior you've taken, and actually forget what the other polls are. But I think that's one of the first ones. So yeah, okay, fabulous. Okay, so you should be seeing the poll on your screen now, and we'll just leave it up for about 30 seconds or so. So what courses have you taken or are you taking now? And maybe you've taken courses at Ottawa U or other institutions. So these are just the ones that are offered at Carleton. If you've taken something equivalent somewhere else, you can answer as you see fit.
We're at 30 seconds now, but there's still a couple trickling in.
Yeah, okay, cool. So let's keep going for another 15 seconds.
Okay.
Sometimes people, I think, can't answer the polls. Oh, yeah, okay. So some people have taken none. All right, I should have had an option for that. Thanks. Okay, good to know. Okay, so we could end the poll and share it. So I always ask this because there's a lot of overlap in this course and 3802, and both in topics, but also in the students who take the course. So it's so I like to kind of keep on top of that. So yeah, a large majority of you are either in 3802 or have taken it. That's great. And there's a decent number of you who haven't taken any, so that's great too. So we'll some of the theoretical concepts will be familiar to you from 3802, but we look at a lot of different examples in this course, and we also read a lot of research. Okay, so I can't remember what was the other poll I wanted to do out of the four. Okay, so let me just think. So let's see. I can't, God, it's so annoying. I can't get rid of the window on my screen. I'm gonna have to go out of my slideshow because my mouse disappears. Oh, there we go. The window disappeared. Okay. So Jenna, can you read me what the titles of the other three polls are? Uh-oh.
You're muted.
Oh, I'm muted? Oh.
No,
I am.
Jenna.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, there's early bird, in person, create a Slack or Discord. I can send them to you.
Okay, no, I got it. Let's just ask about the in-person one. Let's ask that now. So I'm curious whether kind of how many of your classes are supposed to be in person this term? Okay, very interesting. Very even split. Okay, so we can end it and share it because it looks like everybody here pretty much has answered. So yeah, so it looks like most of you have a mix. Most of you have a mix of some online and some that are supposed to be in person. All right, thanks, Jenna. Okay, now how on earth do I get rid of this without my mouse? Oh, there we go. Okay, when I go to a video slide, my mouse comes back. All right. Okay, so I want to tell you a bit about peacocks this morning. So as you know, they have these amazing feathers, and these long green feathers are not actually their tail. This video is in slow motion. But as you'll see in this clip, the long feathers are kind of the back feathers in front of the tail. And what you're seeing here is this male raises those train feathers. You're seeing the tail feathers underneath that are really attached to really strong muscles and kind of do the work of raising those super long train feathers. And then the other ones that were wiggling at the back there were the bird's wings. So we're seeing a male raise his train from behind.
Those feathers are called rectrices, correct?
The tail feathers are rectrices, exactly.
Yeah.
The train feathers are coverts, which is I think a word for just like body feathers. Okay, so just so we know the terminology here. Okay, what's this next clip? Okay, so the train is made up of around 150 to 160 of these mesmerizing eye spots. And each of these multicolored eye spots is on a separate feather. And it gets displayed against this background of these undulating, lush green feather barbs. Only males grow the train, and they use it to try to attract a mate. So in this clip, you see the male, the peacock, displaying his train to court this female in front, the peahen. So peacocks just refers to the males of the species, and the species is is peafowl. Oops, okay. So fully grown, the train, oops, that was a video. Go back there, play this video. The train weighs a pound. That's about 10% of the male's body weight. And it doesn't stop them from flying, but they're not very confident flyers, and they can be hesitant to take off like this male was here. And every fall, those feathers get shed, and the peacocks have to grow this entire 1 pound thing again every year around this time of year. They're growing it for half the year. So that's a lot of work for something that's a pretty big burden energetically, and that also must make it hard to escape from predators in their natural environment, like this tiger here in India, where peafowl are originally from. So, oops, how do we get? Okay, there we go. So if these feathers make it harder to survive, how could they evolve? Remember, natural selection is supposed to favor traits that help an animal survive, like this nice camouflage plumage that you see in these 3 peahens. So there's actually 3 in this picture. So how does natural selection allow the peacock's train to evolve? Okay, so this problem caused one famous scientist to write this in a letter to one of their scientist friends. And does anyone know who this was without looking ahead at the lecture slides? Does anyone know the answer to who wrote, "The sight of the feather in the peacock's tail makes this person sick"? Any guesses? So yes, Augusto, you're correct. It was Darwin. So 1 year after he wrote his book, The Origin of Species, he wrote this in a letter to the American botanist Asa Gray. And he was complaining, oops, this is so annoying without my mouse. Okay, he was complaining that he couldn't figure out how the peacock's train fit into his theory of natural selection. It seemed to be a paradox. And 11 years later, he came up with the solution. And we now call it sexual selection, which hopefully you've learned about in your other courses. Definitely if you're taking animal behavior, you will. But it goes something like this. So if we imagine a population here, and the ones without the train feathers are the females, and the ones with the kind of rudimentary trains are the males. And if we imagine that some males have a mutation that makes their, that their feathers a little bit longer, a little bit more exaggerated, a little bit more. And imagine some females just happen to like that, happen to be attracted to that. Well, maybe more and more females will choose the males with that mutation as a mate. And what is going to happen is that when we look at subsequent generations, this male with that mutation will have enhanced mating success, enhanced numbers of offspring. And over time, the composition of the population will change so that that mutation will be represented more. And so we'll see change in the population as we go through the generations. And this is how extravagant ornaments can evolve, even if they have a cost to survival. Sorry, this is slow because I can't figure out how to advance the slide. Okay, there we go. Okay, so Darwin realized that even if I don't know if this, I think this is a video, even, no, it's not a video. Okay, even if long feathers reduce their owner's survival, they could be compensated for by the increase in mating success. So he called this process sexual selection to distinguish it from his other theory of natural selection. And so this is a really powerful idea for two reasons. First, it means that traits can evolve just because they happen to look attractive to another sex. These traits might not be good for anything except looking pretty. Second, it means that the mind of the peahen is responsible for the evolution of the peacock's train. And I find that really incredible. If we want to give credit where credit's due, we should really be celebrating the peahen, because they're like the creators of this thing, the architects of it. So, so Darwin published another book on this theory of sexual selection about 12 years after his book on natural selection came out. And it was like a sensation. When it came out, he was named Man of the Day in Vanity Fair in 1871. And so like, imagine that happening now, like whatever magazines you see in the supermarket, we're not seeing like the big scientists named there. So he was famous. And you know, they made cartoons about him. And this is a cartoon that was specifically about his theory of sexual selection. This theory, although the book was popular, the theory was not a hit with other scientists, at least not right away. In fact, it took 100 years for it to become accepted. And the problem was this idea that females could choose their mates, this idea of mate choice. People in Darwin's time doubted whether this was possible. Their society, Victorian society, was very male dominated. Females were thought of as passive, and they thought that choice required conscious thought. And they thought animals just didn't have the brain capacity to do that, let alone female animals. And they say, you know, scientists wrote things like, well, even if females could choose their mates, they'd be too inconsistent, too fickle to produce something as marvelous and perfect as the peacock's train. So it's worth noting, though, that even though the scientists at the time did not accept Darwin's idea of sexual selection and female choice, it wasn't a totally new idea that females could be choosy. And in fact, people who bred animals, like farmers, knew very well that female animals could be very picky about who they would mate with. This is a photograph of a rich guy in California in the mid-1800s, the same era as Darwin. And his name is Lucky Baldwin. And he lived in what's now kind of the suburbs of LA, but then it was like ranch land. And he was really into birds. And he imported a small group of peafowl from India to his ranch. And just let them breed and go wild. And so that was almost 200 years ago. And his peafowl did extremely well in the like golden lands of California. And the population grew, and it's been persisting ever since. And so if you go to this part of California today, there's this community where the peafowl are just there. It's like an introduced species, and they roam the suburbs. And they're particularly common at this park called the Los Angeles Arboretum. And that's where I went to study their behavior. Okay, so Zainab asks a question. If the majority of male peacocks look very similar, what criteria are females using to base them on? That's an excellent question, and I'll get to that as I tell you a bit about the research that we did. Okay, so this is a map that is produced by a birding website called eBird, and it shows you where birders have seen peacocks all around the world. So you can see that most peacocks live in India. They're quite broadly distributed there, but the other little pockets of purple are the other places where they've been introduced and where they live freely. So we've got peacocks in Florida, peacocks in different parts of California, Saudi Arabia, it looks like, and Hawaii. So before I get to the research on Zainab's question, why on earth is this species from India so adaptable to different habitats that are so far away from where it's from? Well, I don't know the answer for sure, but I think one of the reasons is their social behavior. So I'm going to tell you a bit about that. Okay, so they're very social animals. They even roost together in the same trees overnight. So in this picture, there are 5 peafowl roosting in the trees behind the one that's flying down in the morning. So see if you can spot all 5 of them. I think I can see 4. We'll zoom in and see. Oh, okay, so there's one at the top there. I didn't see that one. Okay, so they stick together, and that means that they can defend themselves from much bigger predators. For example, this is a site that I photographed one morning at the Arboretum. So this is a gaggle of peahens chasing a coyote, which is a formidable predator to them, away. So they get strength in numbers. The second reason I think peafowl do so well in these novel environments has to do with their parental care. Peahens are dedicated mothers. This is a photograph from India, and chicks will stay with their mother for nearly a year. So compare that to most other birds, like the ones that were showing up at the bird feeder on the video before we started. They're usually with their parents for just a month or 2, whereas young peafowl spend a year with kind of a knowledgeable adult. So this extended period of care means that peahens can transmit skills to help their offspring cope with new environments, such as showing them what to eat in new environments like Southern California, and how to avoid danger, and like novel dangers like cars and crossing roads. Mother peahens even show their chicks how to display. So this is a video taken from this population in California by a colleague of mine there. Doesn't need volume, so I'll just turn the volume down. So what you're seeing is a mother with her chicks that are probably about 6 months old, demonstrating the train display. And so they start doing that right away, well before the males don't grow the full train until they're about 3 or 4 years old. Okay, so I think another reason peafowl do so well is that even though they don't have big brains as birds go, they're very good at learning, and they're very good at learning in social situations as well. So I'm going to show you this video that I think illustrates this. This is something that I saw happen during one field season. And so what you're seeing here are some subadult males. These are like teenagers. They're not old enough to grow the full train yet, but they're very interested in females. They will display every chance they get trying to court females. Females are not going to mate with them. They're not old enough to have a kind of a territory and be considered as potential mates, but they're practicing all the time. Okay, so let's watch and see what happens. And in this clip, I'll back up and say, for some of the research that we were doing, I was throwing peanuts on the ground because I was trying to record as many of these displays in slow motion as I could. So I'm throwing down peanuts to try to attract females so that the males will display. Okay, so the males are going to eat the peanuts too, but this male did something really interesting. He noticed the female's reaction to the peanut, and instead of swallowing it himself, he held it in his mouth and used it like a lure for like 5 minutes. So I think that's like remarkable social sophistication, and just shows how rapidly these birds can learn, even though they're not like African gray parrots, or they're not especially brainy birds. And so overall, I think it's these social behaviors combined with their parental care and their ability to learn these novel experiences that is why they adapt so readily to new environments.
Don't they also, the younger males will, or actually the older males will choose to display around younger males so that the older male looks better to the females, knowing that the younger males are too young
Yeah,
during
that's
the Lecan season? They're weaker satellites.
So the males do display, so I'm going to show you their mating system on the next slide. This is a map from a population in India. Their mating system is called a lek-based mating system. And a lek is just an area where males gather to try to impress females. So each of these little dots is a male's territory, and he'll come there day after day to display during the mating season. And actually, year after year, as long as a male is alive, he'll come back and use the exact same territory. And so this happened in California as well. And I'll show you some maps of the California population too. The young males are around too. They don't have territories, but they're kind of around trying to display whenever they can. And most of the time, the older males will be aggressive towards them. If a female is in an older male's little display area and a young male comes in, the older male will usually like chase him off, and they can be quite aggressive with each other. They have like sharp spurs. But it's a really good question, and one that people have posed. Do females make their choice based on the relative comparison of different males? And so in that sense, like it's kind of like a marketing thing. Can you make yourself look better by displaying next to somebody who might be less attractive?
Yeah, I took a birds course, and there's a lot of birds that do lekking that end up doing that tactic where they'll display against weaker looking males in order to look better themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know if we have like enough data from our research to be able to look at that, but that's really interesting. And I was, yeah. So here's the map of the lek in California where I studied them, where all of these videos were taken. So they're setting up their display courts along like sidewalks and near buildings and things. And so each of these little blue dots is a male's territory. Oops. And so we capture each of these males, and what you're seeing here is the little numbered leg band that we put on each one to be able to tell who's who. So this is male number 45, who was quite successful. And it just amazed me that we'd come back year after year and they'd be displaying in the exact same spot. And if we scale the diameter of these circles to be proportional to each male's mating success, I might have shown this before to some of you who took 1105. You can see there's huge variation. So the really tiny dots on here are the males who did not mate or were not seen mating in our hundreds of hours of observation at all. So 0 matings for all the small dots, whereas the big dots, including male 45, often got 5, 10, 15 females to mate with them. And when we come back the following year, we see that there's some changes in who the most successful males are, but still the fact that there's this huge inequality is persisting, right? So every year there's like tremendous skew, tremendous variation in how often these males mate. And here we have 2010. And for the most part, the males that are duds are still duds, and the ones that are successful are still successful. And this is incredible because all of these males who aren't mating are spending 6 months growing this train and spending hundreds of hours displaying. So the females are very choosy, just as Darwin noted. Okay, so just summarizing some of the data. So we had about 116 peacocks in our study. Half of them, so this was more than just in that population. I studied them in a couple of other populations as well. And half of the males we observed never were seen mating. And 5% of them mated more than 10 times. So big differences consistent with Darwin's idea of female choice. So this raises Zainab's question, what is it that sets them apart? To me, if I didn't have a leg band on them, I couldn't tell most of them apart. Okay, so the students who have answered, including Xavier, are correct. Having a bigger train with more feathers is generally associated with greater success. But one of the things that we learned from our research is that the color of these feathers is really important. And birds have excellent color vision, better than ours. And so one of the things we did when we captured the peacocks is I removed a few feathers from each one of the males, took them back to the lab to measure the colors with a spectrometer. And we looked at the correlation between the male's coloration and their mating success. And it turns out that this blue-green part of the feather is really important. We found that about half of the variation in mating success in the population was explained statistically by the iridescence of this blue-green color. And so this is actually a little video of how the color of this feather looks a bit different depending on the angle of the light. And so we measured the feathers at a couple of different light angles, and we found that the males with the most changeable blue-green were the ones that were most successful. And this was actually found in a separate study of peacocks in France as well. Okay, so Hovagim, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, but asks the question, an excellent question. Does this mean that the future populations will be genetically related to each other more so? So because the females are mating so much with a small number of males, absolutely, right? So if it's a closed population without a lot of kind of immigration, emigration, it's going to mean inbreeding over time. And so that's something that I don't think has been studied very much in these lek breeding systems, where like a small number of males are super successful. But I think a lot of it also has to do with age. I think a lot of the unsuccessful males may be the younger ones. And so they may have their time, right? It just might take 5-10 years. And so that effect of kind of new males becoming more successful eventually over time might mean that mating success is not, there's some variation that we're observing that's not related to genetic differences, that it might just be age effects as well.
Sometimes I'm pretty sure feathers and the colors of feathers are determined by a diet. So if a male gets a better diet, it will eventually produce a better plumage, which will look better to the female. So
yeah, absolutely. So we'll get to that when we cover sexual selection. So any environmental effects on male attractiveness wouldn't be genetic for the most part, right? So if a male is just able to get a better diet and that makes him more attractive, well, then that's, his attractiveness might be unrelated to his genes. But it's a really interesting question. And Hamad, absolutely, like if the females are choosing certain males that have, that are highly limited in number, it's going to lead to inbreeding depression, and that might lead to mutations and things that might make individuals less attractive. So Zainab asks, what do peacocks eat? Well, in California, they eat all kinds of things, including like people food, but they're omnivores. They eat plants, insects. In India, even small lizards. Okay, so we found this correlation between coloration and mating success, and we don't know if it has to do with genetics or environmental effects on health influencing the color. But we also don't know, if we didn't know from the correlation whether it really was color that the females were choosing on or some other trait that happened to be correlated with color. And so Darwin even wrote that you really need an experiment to test that. And so he wrote in his, this is another letter to another friend, right? He said it would be a good idea to cut off the feathers of peacocks to test these ideas. But who would be willing to do that? Who would sacrifice the beauty of this bird for, just this scientific idea? Well, we did it. We did experiments where we cut off feathers. I'm not showing those today, but we also did experiments where we tried to manipulate the colors. And so we altered some of these males' colors with waterproof stickers. It was a pain to get them on every single feather. We missed a few, you can see on this guy, but we altered the middle part of the eye spot to make it either white or black on some of these males. And this is a close-up of what the feathers look like with the stickers. So it's pretty crude manipulation. And what I would really like to do is a more subtle one, but we haven't figured out a way to do that yet. And what we found was that the males who had their blue-green part of the eye spot removed got practically no matings. I think one of these males got to mate once. Despite the fact that they still spent the same amount of time on their display territories and they still spent the same amount of time displaying their trains. This experimentally demonstrates that the females do care about color. And then one other study I wanted to show you quite briefly was we were interested in how males might be able to enhance the appearance of the colors themselves, because the colors are iridescent and they change depending on the appearance of the light. So can males use behavior to really make these colors pop the way this male is here in the slow motion video? Okay, so just very briefly, I'll show you some data from what we did. We measured the orientation of males during their displays relative to the sun. And what this figure shows you is some of the data summarized from a whole bunch of different displays. And so we're looking down on a display from above. And this diagram shows you each of the small gray vectors is the summary of directional data for an individual male. And the red one is the average across all 11 males in this study. And so we found that they do have an average direction. They display about 45 degrees to the right of the sun. I don't know why it was on average to the right of the sun, but birds have sidedness in a lot of their behaviors. So it seems like it's something like that. And this angle is the same one where the blue-green is the brightest. So we think that the males are using a lot of their tactics during display to get the female into this visual sweet spot where they can really maximize the appearance of their plumage. Okay, so just some key themes from this that relate to the course. Social behaviors can be beneficial, but also costly. Social behavior can facilitate adaptation and survival in challenging environments. It can affect learning and the transmission of information. And there's often tremendous variation in behavior and performance among individuals, even within a population. And to the extent that this variation is heritable, this is the stuff of evolution. So it's really exciting to me to hear you all anticipate some of these ideas about inbreeding depression and things like that. And I don't think we'd get that in the in-person class. Okay, and lastly, our own social biases often affect how we view, I can't read the rest of my slide, how we view the natural world, right? And shape the history of science. Okay, so I'm gonna get into the course outline now, but I think I wanted to ask to do the other two polls. Okay, maybe the polls are coming up. Okay, so we'll hold off on that. They might be coming up in a few slides. So again, feel free to drop your questions in the chat as we go. But to start with, the course is on Brightspace, as I'm sure you all know. I'm going to post everything under Course Home. So use Course Home as like your touchstone for the course. I will make one announcement every week. Sometimes I might make more than one. But if you scroll down from here, you see like the other sections where I'm going to put things as they develop. So these slides are posted under Course Home, under like lectures and videos or something. Okay. Oh, that's a good question. Zainab asks, I think what Zainab's asking is like, will you be tested on the material from today's lecture? Probably not. I don't think I'm going to ask you about like, the percentage of peacocks that were successful or something like that. But the concepts, there will be concepts in this section that will be taught again in another lecture. And you can be tested on that. So you don't have to worry about like studying these slides, I'd say, but the ideas will come up again. So definitely read the course outline. And I think, yeah, under lectures and videos, there's a link to these slides already. And I'll add the slides for each lecture as they happen. I'll try to add them beforehand.
Roz?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there Ottawa U students in this class?
There is at least one Ottawa U student in the class.
Okay, so I didn't know this, but I guess they can't access Brightspace unless they're given a,
yes,
like they have to request access, I guess.
Correct. Yeah. So so I suspect that this student already has access, but let us know if you don't, because
yeah, I'm not sure if you have to do it for each course or not. Okay.
Okay,
Awesome.
good. So Sophie's all good. Yeah, thanks, Jenna. And by the way, I forgot that I was going to get Jenna to introduce yourself and your research. I just totally forgot to do that.
It's all good.
So yeah, why don't we do that now? Yeah.
Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Jenna. I think I've actually taken a couple classes with a few of you. I recognize some names. I'm a master's student here at Carleton, and as Roz said earlier, I did my undergrad honors thesis with her in my 4th year, and I took this class in my 3rd year. My research now is we're looking at the effects of diet on female mate choice in Grilloides pennsylvanicus, which is a cricket species, in the Bertram lab. So Sue Bertram, I'm sure some of you guys have had her as well. I think that's just about it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. So I always wondered with the peafowl why the females differed in their behavior. And I wondered if it was like, yeah, condition. So you're able to like experimentally test that with the crickets.
Yeah, we're going to make up a couple different diets, and we're in the process of kind of deciding what behaviors we're going to be looking at. And there's a lot up in the air right now. We ended up having to switch my species and everything. So it's been a couple hiccups, but we're getting going.
Nice. Okay, so back to the course outline. So you'll see Jenna's contact info and mine in the course outline, and you'll see these learning outcomes. So in addition to telling you about neat examples of social evolution, I try to use this course as a way to get you to read research and critique research. And so pretty much half of the course is going to be reading and discussing papers. And I try to pick, it's easy to find really cool papers in this topic. And so I love that aspect of this course. And so we'll be working in groups with each other to discuss and submit assignments that relate to the readings. And we're going to talk about pitfalls and kind of misconceptions when interpreting behavior and how it can be really challenging to kind of get out of our normal human biases. But of course, our human biases are also what makes a lot of these things so interesting. And lastly, I'm going to have you create an original project where you showcase your ability to communicate something about research to the public. Okay, so the evaluation scheme for the course. So we've got these weekly short assignments that you'll do with some other students in the class in a group. Each one is worth 4%. Overall, they'll be worth 20% of your final grade in the course, because only your best 5 will count. So for each of you, I will drop your lowest 3 assignments. And so that's coming up again in a few slides, but don't stress if you have to miss an assignment. We know that things are difficult these days. Okay, there's going to be a midterm on March 2nd, Wednesday morning, worth 20%. Then we've got the project. The project will be due the last week of class, and depending on whether you choose to do an essay or presentation, it will either be due April 6 or April 8. More on that later on in the course. You can read some of the draft instructions that are already posted on Brightspace, and I would encourage you to do that. There's a proposal for the project that will be due after the midterm, and that's pretty short. It's about 1 to 2 pages. Just showing us what you've picked and what you're planning to do. And we'll give you, the idea is that is handed in early enough that we can give you some feedback on it before your final project. Okay, and then there's also a final exam in this course worth 30% of your final grade, and it's going to be during the exam period. So I don't know what date it will be on. We get told by the university what date. Okay. Oh, okay. So we're going to be doing some group work. So participation will be really important. And it's not up to me that we're meeting at 8:30. Like the university just assigns the course a time. And so I regret that, because I know like a lot of students are not early morning people. So what I've decided to do for January at least is that I'm going to make the Wednesday class asynchronous. So that means I will pre-record the lecture. So what I was doing today, I will pre-record and you can watch it anytime, but I don't, I haven't made it already. I'll kind of make them as we go. And when we go back to campus, which I hope will be in February, I'll reassess this plan. So far I'm just like planning for the next couple weeks, basically. And then Fridays are going to be synchronous. And so that's when we'll come together on Zoom, and you'll have read the papers before the class, and then you'll do the homework assignment during the class. And then that's great because it's done. When class is done, your homework is done and you can move on to other things. Okay, so the schedule is posted in advance. So Jenna has reminded me that there are a couple of polls. And so let's do the polls in a second. There's one more thing I just want to mention here, exceptions. So this Friday, because it's the first week of class, I don't have a homework assignment this Friday. I wanted to wait until next week to start the homework, just in case there are like any latecomers, or there's some students who are like stuck in other places because of COVID and things like that. So no homework this Friday, but there will be a synchronous class. So please read the assigned readings, come to the class on Friday. I will do a lecture, but we'll also have a little bit of discussion. We'll kind of get used to that format. Okay, and the other thing I just wanted to say was, if you have a reason why you can't be in a particular class, I've tried to build in flexibility by dropping your 3 lowest assignments. So if you can't come on Friday, you'd get 0 on that assignment. But if you know in advance that you have a reason you're going to miss a Friday, I'm willing to consider exceptions, and you can write to me and ask, and we can work out some alternative arrangement. So get in touch with me if you want to do that. Okay, so let's do those other 2 polls. So the first one's about like, are you a morning person or not? Maybe you are. Maybe the people who came today probably are mostly morning people. But I know from experience that like students do work on things like, after 9 p.m. a lot of time. So I'm guessing a lot of students are night owls. Okay, that was fast. We can wrap it up and share it. Okay, so a lot of you are in between. And yeah, okay, so the early birds are the minority. Okay, thank you, Jenna. And then we've got one more poll, which is in a lot of my other classes, I set up like either a Discord group or a Slack group as kind of an official place for people to chat. And I also use it as a place where students can ask me questions. It's easier often to do that than over email. So my question is, would you like me to set up either a Slack group for this course or a Discord group? Or, like, I'm sure nobody's like, no, don't do that. But, I'm curious, are you eager for one of those or the other? And I'm happy to make, whatever is the most popular choice. I know because this is an upper year class, students tend to have fewer questions, but not having the in-person time to chat, it's nice to have a place to talk outside of email. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so Jenna, yeah, I guess you can share. So people like Discord. Okay, great. I'll do it. I'll make a Discord group for this course, and I'll just like post the invite link, and it's fully optional. It's just a place for you to like chat with each other and ask me or Jenna questions as well. You should still get in touch with us by email as well. And this is just a place where you can like have like real-time conversations or like talk to other students. Okay, so student is asking me in the chat about the midterm. So I've got a slide about that coming up. So we could get rid of the poll and we'll keep going. So I'll get to that in a minute about the midterm and exam. Oh, darn. I don't know if I can get rid of the poll. I might have to. Okay, sorry. I have to like get out of my thing to get my mouse. Okay. Okay, so there's no textbook. We're going to be reading papers instead. They're all posted on Brightspace now, so you can read ahead if you want to, but I would recommend reading them as close as possible to the Friday class, because that's when you're going to need to have them like in your head. Okay, so here are the readings for this Friday. There's 3 of them, and these 3 aren't research articles. They're a mix of one's like a blog post, basically kind of from a company, and the other 2 are journalism about science. So you can get those readings here, but mostly we'll be reading scientific research papers. Okay, so next Friday is the first homework, but the concepts from the assigned readings can be tested on the midterm and exam. So in addition to the homework, you need to know the general concepts. I'm not going to ask you about like the nitty gritty, but the general hypotheses and ideas. Okay. So just about the group assignments. So the groups will be about 4 students each, and you'll make 1 submission, and that gets graded, and all the group members get the same grade. They're not difficult, so don't stress about them. And if you miss a class, you get 0, but again, don't stress because I'm going to drop your 3 lowest. And again, just keep in mind that the major concepts may be tested on the midterm and exam. So even if you miss a class, I still recommend that you read those readings and do the homework questions on your own. And I'll post answers to the homework questions later on too. Okay, so Zainab, great question, great timing. So what will the midterm and final exam be like? So it's going to be mostly written answers. I may include some multiple choice or matching, but I might have no multiple choice. And the reason is that I don't know yet, like whether these are going to be online or in-person tests, because we have to wait and see. If the course is happening in person, the test will probably happen in person. And in that case, I'm more comfortable using multiple choice, but I just find it's too easy to for students to cheat on multiple choice questions. So they're not a really good test of learning. And then another student asked whether the midterm would be open book or not. And I haven't decided yet, but I think I'm leaning towards open book because I just don't see, when we taught this course 2 years ago and it was during COVID, the final exam was open book and I think it worked great. We kind of asked questions that weren't like right out of the slides. It was more getting students to apply the ideas. And I think that's the best test of your learning. So I think I will probably make the midterm and final exam open book, but I'll certainly let you know well in advance. And definitely if they're online, I'm going to make them open book because I don't believe in trying to proctor the online tests. So most likely open book and maybe not online. And even if we're in person, it could still be an open book midterm and exam. So stay tuned. Sorry that I don't have a definite answer for you yet. Okay, so I already said about the timing. Okay, so there's no makeup test. If you miss the midterm for any reason, doesn't matter if you're sick or anything, I'm just going to drop your midterm and then your final exam will be worth 50% to cover it. Also, if you do better on the final exam than the midterm, I'll just drop your midterm and make your final exam worth 50%. So I'm just trying to make that as kind of fair and easy as possible for everybody. So that's nice because it gives you a break if you get sick or something, you can't write the midterm. But also, if you can, like, write the midterm, right? Even if you didn't have enough time to prepare as you would have liked, you should still write it, because if you do better on the final, I'll just drop your midterm, right? And because the midterm gives you important practice. Okay, so just about the project. So the project is going to be either an essay or a short presentation. And I already mentioned the proposal, and we'll talk more about the details later, but you can read a bit about it on Brightspace now. Okay, participation bonus. So this is in the course outline. We're going to have some guest presenters, as well as some of you will be presenting, because I'm assuming a bunch of you will choose to do a presentation. And so the guest presenters will be on March 30. So we've got 4 grad students or graduates that have done research on insects and spiders and bird behavior, and they'll come and give us kind of 10-minute presentations about their work. And then you all will be doing short presentations as well. Not all of you, but probably a bunch of you. So for the rest of us who maybe, for all of you, if you attend these presentation sessions, we'll take your attendance in some way, and I'll give you a 1% bonus on your final grade in the course for your participation in those sessions. So I'll give you more information about that later. Okay, so academic integrity, especially because we're going to be working together a lot. We expect you to be respectful of each other and to respect diverse viewpoints. And we expect you to be honest and fair with your group members. We don't want you to seek unfair advantages over fellow students. We expect you to contribute to your group and not kind of freeload off of other people's efforts. So homework, group stuff. The midterm, the exam, and the project are supposed to be individual assessments. And so just to keep in mind, if we have online midterm or exam or open book, it's a violation of academic integrity to share questions or answers on our midterm or final exam. So the midterm and exam are intended to be testing you, what you know. And if you're found to have communicated or posted information from the midterm or exam anywhere, that's a violation of our integrity. And so the penalties for those violations are pretty severe. It could include a 0 on the test or exam, or a failure of the course, or even worse. So don't risk it. Make sure you understand the policies. It's not worth it. Okay, so I'll just ask if you have any questions, but this is the last slide with content on it, just a reminder of what's happening. So here's what you should do this week. So read those 3 articles and then come on Friday, and we'll get into some groups and we'll kind of practice discussing articles together. And then next week, you don't come on Wednesday because I'll pre-record a lecture and post it, but do read the 2 papers and then do attend Zoom on Friday. Okay, and so all of this is, of course, posted in the slides. Okay, so yeah, never mind about the poll. Oh no, yeah, we did all the polls. We're done the polls. Questions now. Are there any? You can ask on the mic or on the chat. I'm going to come. Oh,
I do have one quick question.
Sure.
So I've been looking at your research, and I'm extremely interested in possibly doing an honors thesis with you. Is how do you go about like applying or reaching out for this sort of thing? I'm very confused, as they don't really explain it much.
Okay, yeah, that is a great question. Sorry, I wanted to come out of my slide show to get my mouse back, and I also need to see who was talking, because I know you were speaking before, but I couldn't see who you are. So Xavier, hi. Yeah, that's an excellent question for like other people in the class too, because now you're at the point, probably most of you are in 3rd year and thinking about this. Okay, so we do have honor students in the lab. So what you really need to do is talk to your professors, and if you get in touch with me and express interest, I'm always happy to meet with students to chat about possibilities. And it's also a good idea to have kind of a roster of potential labs that you might be interested in. And so what I recommend doing is going to the Carleton biology website and navigating to like faculty members and looking at the profs. And there's, if you click on each one, you can kind of see, as you've looked at my website, but you can see other people's websites and what they do and kind of figure out which ones you're interested in. And then inquire with them, and you can send them a copy of a resume, and you can keep your email short, but kind of express like, I'm in my 3rd year, I'm interested in this, this, and this. I want to do an honors thesis for this reason. Are you available to meet and discuss? And I'm absolutely happy to talk to you, Xavier, about it. Yeah, but just for general advice, that's the best way to do it. And then it's helpful to have read a little bit about their research. It impresses me if somebody's read something that I've written, and it also shows me what you're interested in. And so if you have one, oh, go ahead. Your
Peacock paper is a paper we've discussed in an animal behavior course before.
Oh, cool.
At Carleton, actually.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So so if you have one of those meetings, like treat it like an interview, right? And prepare for it, and be prepared to talk about why you want to do an honors thesis, what you want to do after undergrad, and why you're interested in that professor's lab, what you want to get out of an honors thesis. And yeah, so trying to think if I've missed anything. So it's kind of unfortunate that that's the way it works now, because it's all kind of informal, right? And so it's like the students who have the inside information that know about this that are able to figure it out most easily. And a lot of students just don't know, like they don't have kind of like an older sibling or like a parent who can tell them, okay, this is what you need to do. So I think in the future, we're going to change that and have students kind of apply centrally and figure it out in some other way. But right now, the way it's done is all through this kind of like networking, basically. Yeah.
With that being said, like I completely understand what you guys are going through, because when I was in third, fourth year, I had no experience. There's no one in my family or friends that is in science. So I had no idea how to do this. Same thing about applying to grad school. So for anyone that is either looking to apply to an honors or their master's program, depending on if you're in third and fourth year, I'm happy to answer like any questions. So you guys can either reach out to me like via email or on Discord. I know how incredibly stressful it is. And if there's enough people that are interested in asking some questions, like I'd be more than happy to even have like a Zoom session outside of class or whatever, because I wish in my third, fourth year that was available, because it would have saved me a heck of a lot of time and a lot of stress. So don't hesitate to reach out to me if you guys have any questions about that.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, Jenna. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I hope that answers it. If there's other questions about that process, let me know. But I see Donovan also has a question about favorite examples of social behavior. Oh, there's so many. This example on this slide is a great Argus pheasant displaying just like some seagull or something. So that's some interspecies sociality. And the peafowl did that too. The peacocks would display to squirrels and almost anything that moved. Yeah, I don't know. I could just think of like things that spending hundreds of hours watching the peacocks, you kind of get to see things that, a lot of the images I showed you were like my favorite things that I saw. But one other one that I noticed was that the females looked different. The really young females looked different than the older females. So females in their first year had kind of darker plumage. And if you had spent a lot of time with peafowl, you could tell apart, okay, this is a really young female, probably not old enough to breed yet. And one of the things we noticed was that some females would get aggressively chased away by the adult, fully trained males. So that's weird. Why would they do that? They're supposed to be willing to mate with anything. They're even displaying to squirrels. But we realized that it was the really young females that were getting chased away. So it was like the males knew that that female wasn't going to be like successful mom and, a waste of his time to be displaying to her. So that was really interesting and quite sophisticated, more than most people would guess, I think, about them. So yeah, okay. Any other questions? Yeah. Okay, so if there aren't any others, so I will see you on Friday, I guess, and I'll send you all an invite to a Discord group shortly.